What's going on, everybody, and welcome to day 26 of our Juniper networking series. In today's lab, we will be talking about port security, and in particular, we're going to be talking about MAC address limiting. So with MAC address limiting, basically what we're going to do on this switch is limit the amount of MAC addresses that can be learned on a particular interface. So I'm going to give you guys an example to better help you understand port security and why we may use it. So let's say I am a hacker and this is the switch that I want to attack. And the reason I want to attack this switch right here is because it has a very valuable asset connected to one of its interfaces. And I want to eavesdrop on all of the information being sent on this PC. So what I may do if I know that this switch has no type of network access control or port security, what I can do is I can plug to one of these interfaces that are on this switch and send a whole bunch of illegitimate MAC addresses to overwhelm the MAC address table or the CAM table. And once that happens, this switch is going to start flooding traffic out of all interfaces, and as a result, is going to be acting as a hub. So then I can eavesdrop on the conversation and see all of the traffic that is being sent to this valuable asset, and I have carried out my attack because this network administrator or network engineer that configured this switch has not implemented any type of network access control or port security. So what we're going to do in this lab is implement MAC limiting, and I am going to prevent this switch from learning more than one MAC address on an interface. So it's going to dynamically learn the MAC address, the first MAC address that is sent on the interface, and if it learns another MAC address, it is going to shut down that interface. Alright, so our switch is freshly booted. Let's go ahead and log in. Let's log in as root. Alrighty, type in our password. Alright, we're in the free BSD shell. Let's type CLI. Alright, so we're in operational mode now. So the first thing I want to do is take a look at our Ethernet switching table. So let's do a show Ethernet switching table. And right now, we do not have anything but one static defined MAC address within our Ethernet switching table. So what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and plug my PC into the gigabit 002 port on our switch and see what is going to change in our Ethernet switching table. So let's go ahead and plug our PC in and see what happens. We have link lights. So now if I do a show Ethernet switching table, we can see that we have learned the MAC address of my PC on the gigabit Ethernet 002 port. So now let's go ahead and configure the MAC limiting command. Alright, so let's go to edit and let's do a set Ethernet switching options. And if we do a context sensitive help, the option that we want to go with is the secure access port. So now let's go ahead and type that. Let's do secure access port. Let's do another context sensitive help. And right here we can define the interface. So we want to define the interface that we're going to specify. So let's do interface. And we want to do the GE002 port. And if I do a context sensitive help here, the first option that we want to go with is the persistent learning option. So basically what this is going to do, instead of it dynamically learning like we see right here, once this computer connects onto this port, is going to persistently learn it. So now once this computer is on that interface, this interface is only going to allow that MAC address. So we want that MAC address to stay on that interface. So let's do persistent learning. And if we do another context sensitive help, we want to go with the MAC limit option, and it's going to limit the number of dynamically learned MAC addresses on this interface. So let's do MAC limit, and we want to specify only one MAC address that is allowed on this interface. And if I do another context sensitive help, we want to define the action that we're going to take if it goes over the one MAC address. So let's do action, and let's do a context sensitive help to see the options that we have. And we can drop packets and log it. We can log it and send a log message. We can do nothing at all, or we can shut down the interface. So let's go with the shut down option. So if it goes over one MAC address, we're going to shut down this interface. And that is the end of that command. So let's go ahead and enter there. And if I do a show pipe compare, once we commit these options, or in our candidate configuration right now, we see that we are in the Ethernet switching options, secure access port, and we want to only allow one MAC address. If it goes over that one MAC address, we're going to shut down the interface, and we're doing persistent learning. So once this MAC address is learned on this interface, it is going to stay on that interface. So let's go ahead and do a commit and quit. All right, perfect. So now if I do a show, let's do a show Ethernet switching table now, we can see that the entry that we had from learned has changed now to persistent right here. And that is the MAC address of our computer, and it is now persistently learned because it dynamically learned that MAC address, and now it is staying on that particular interface. So from a layer 2 perspective, if I were to plug another device into this same gigabit Ethernet 002 port, it's going to have another MAC address, and as a result, this interface should go down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug my computer, and I'm going to plug it into another Ethernet switch that I have running in my home lab that has a different MAC address, and we're going to see exactly what happened. All right, so let me go ahead and unplug this side of the Ethernet cord. This is running to my PC. Let me unplug that, and let's plug it into my Let's just plug it into my switch down here, my Cisco switch. All right, this is a little bit better. This is my Cisco switch, a better angle. We're going to plug into my Cisco switch, and as you can see, we have link lights at the moment. Really want to focus on the Juniper device. So let's see what happens. We still have link lights. See how long it's going to stay up. And now, you guys look at both sides of that port. We do not have link lights. So it looks like it learned another MAC address, and this port went down. And if I go back over to the Cisco device, we had link lights before, and that is down as well. So let's take a look at the CLI and see what happened. All right, so now we're back on the CLI. Let's run a couple commands. So let's do a show Ethernet switching table. And I don't know if this output is going to give us much information, and it's not. We can see that we still have that static entry, but our persistent entry is now gone. So let's do another command to give us a lot more information about what is going on with this particular interface. So if I do a show Ethernet switching, and if I do a interface, right now we can see that on our gigabit Ethernet 002 interface, it is blocking because the MAC limit has been exceeded. So it learned another MAC address on this interface, and as a result, the interface shut down. So it is administratively down. We can see the state right here is down, and that is because my PC and my other network switch within my lab have two different MAC addresses, and we set the MAC address limit to only be one MAC address. So since two were learned, this interface was shut down. And one more thing that I want to touch on, of course, is that these interfaces are at the layer 2 level. So if I do a show interfaces terse, we're dealing with, of course, layer 2 of the OSI model. So if I do a show interfaces terse, of course, my gigabit Ethernet 002 interface is in the Ethernet switching family. Okay, so these are layer 2 ports, and like I said, the link is down right now because it is air disabled. Because we went over the MAC address limit. So let's try to plug back into my PC and see if the interface comes back up. Let's test it and see. And let me know what you think is going to happen. Will the interface come up or will it stay down? Drop it in the comments right now. Let's check it out. All right, so let's take this Ethernet connection out of our switch. Take it out. Plug it back into the original connection, which is right here. All right, we're plugged back in. Our computer is on, we're connected, but if we look at the port, it is not giving us link lights. And if we also take a look at our computer, our Ethernet connection is showing as not connected. So let's hop onto the CLI because our computer is not getting link lights, so the answer was no. We have to go into the CLI and re-enable this interface. So let's do that. All right, so let's go Let's hit enter a few times and hit Q actually to get that off of our screen. So we want to run a few commands from operational mode to clear our Ethernet switching table. So the first command that we want to run is clear Ethernet switching table. And if we do a context sensitive help, the first command that we want to do is clear the persistent MAC learning. Okay, so let's do that. Let's hit persistent MAC and let's hit enter there. And let's do a clear Ethernet switching. And if I do another context sensitive help, we want to do the port error. So we want to clear the port errors as well, and that is going to clear that MAC limiting error. All right, let's hit enter there. And now, if we take a look at our Ethernet connection, we do have link lights now. So let me go back onto the PC. We haven't touched anything. I'm just going to change my camera angle to my phone and show you guys that we have link lights on the laptop and also the switch. All right, here's a better angle. We have link lights. And our Ethernet connection is now up. So I appreciate you guys tuning into day 26 of our Juniper networking series and our port security video. We may do another security type video in day 27, so make sure that you stay tuned. But until then, peace out.